Hey all you cool cats and kittens, welcome back to my channel. So it's 2020, there is a global pandemic and majority of people are stuck inside their homes with absolutely nothing to do except for binge watch anything and everything. So Netflix decided what better time than now to drop a bomb on its viewers. That bomb is being called the most famous documentary of all time. We are talking about Tiger King. Murder, mayhem, and madness. Unless you have been solid against the peer pressure or living under a rock, I'm sure you have seen Tiger King. And if not, I'm sure you have seen the various memes that are floating around the internet based on this docu-series. Most of which insinuate that a key character who we will be getting into had a hand in the disappearance of her husband in the late 90s. So I could honestly make a whole series of videos going through the different crimes that were committed by different people who were involved in this documentary, but today we are just going to be talking about one. It is an unsolved case that has inspired many theories, a song and dance on TikTok, and even a song and music video by the Tiger King himself, Joe Exotic. So let's go ahead and jump right on into it. We are going to be talking about the disappearance of Don Lewis. Jack Donald Lewis was born April 30th, 1938 in Dade City, Florida. He went by Don though, so that's what I'm going to be referring to him as. Don had two siblings and was raised by a single mother who worked as a seamstress and sold fresh bread. To help the family out, Don began working at a pretty young age. When Don was in high school and working as a bagger in a grocery store, he met his first wife, Gladys Cross. After dating for 2 years, the couple got married in 1955. Don was 17 and Gladys was 14. Don graduated from Pasco High School and they had their first daughter, Donna, the next year. Don and Gladys had 4 children in total, 3 daughters, Donna, Linda, and Gail, and an adopted son who I could not find any kind of information on. By 1981, Don was what you would consider a self-made man. He had a very successful business, scrapping and selling metal and machine parts, and he also had 2 real estate properties. So January of 1981, insert Carol Murdoch, who you know now as Carol Baskin. Carol Stairs Jones was born on June 6, 1961 on the Lackland Air Force Base in Bexar County. By the age of 9, Carol had an interest in saving cats, but decided against becoming a veterinarian after learning that this job would also mean euthanizing some animals. Carol seems to have had a rough childhood. She revealed in Tiger King that she was sexually assaulted at knife point by 3 men when she was 14 years old. Coming from a highly religious home, Carol was blamed for this assault that she suffered, and so she dropped out of high school and ran away from home the following year. Carol spent a lot of her time hitchhiking between Florida and Maine. She would often sleep under parked cars and stuff like that before she returned to Florida at the age of 17. She eventually got a job at a department store in Tampa where she met and began a relationship with her boss, Michael Murdoch. They moved in together and shortly thereafter married on April 7th, 1979. Carol has gone on to say that she never really loved Michael and she only married him to appease to her parents because they were disappointed that she was living with Michael outside of a marriage. However, on July 16th, 1980, Carol and Michael had their only daughter, Jamie Veronica Murdoch. Around this time, Carol and Michael began breeding Persian and Himalayan cats for some extra money. Allegedly, Michael was abusive and would often beat Carol, so after just 2 years of marriage, Carol decided to do what she had done before and run away. In 1981, Carol threw a potato at Michael as he attempted to attack her and ran out of their home. I just want to put a visual in your head for a second of somebody throwing a potato at somebody else, running out into the night, barefoot. Potatoes are not weapons, y'all. Anyway, as Carol was walking down Nebraska Avenue in Tampa, an older man pulled up alongside her and offered her a ride, which she declined. The man drove off only to pull up again, but this time with a gun in the passenger seat. He gestured to it and told her that she could point it at him if she did not trust him. And for some reason, she agreed and got in the truck. Okay, I don't know if I'm just normal, but I feel like that those are not the best circumstances to get in a vehicle. But okay. The two wound up spending the night together. This man was Don Lewis, although he initially told her that his name was Bob Martin. Carol later wrote in her diary that she fell in love with him then and there. The two began an affair and left their spouses in 1991, getting married shortly after. Carol and Don began buying and selling distressed real estate, building a portfolio worth an estimated $5 million. After getting married, Don bought Carol a bobcat named Windsong. To me, this name reminds me of the seahorse in SpongeBob. You know, the Lisa. When Windsong became a handful, the couple sought a playmate for the cat. Don brought Carol to a bobcat breeder in Minnesota, and upon realizing that the breeder was going to sell those bobcats to be slaughtered for their fur, Don bought Carol all 56 kittens that were there. In 1992, they established a 40-acre ranch filled with lions, tigers, servals, and caracals? Caracals? I don't know how to say that. Anyway, this was called Wildlife on Easy Street, later known as Big Cat Rescue. Despite earning millions, Don had a reputation for being a penny pincher. He reportedly bought clothes from yard sales, ate food out of trash cans, and proposed to Carol with a $14 engagement ring, which I would be more worried about the eating out of the trash can thing. That's just gross. I'm sorry if that offends anybody. Though Carol's dream of caring for animals was finally coming true, her and Don began disagreeing on how the operation should be run. Carol allegedly disapproved of the breeding and selling of big cats, and Don kind of viewed it as a business opportunity. So they settled and wound up breeding big cats for cash for several years. According to Carol, Don was quite the promiscuous one. He would allegedly fly to Costa Rica, where he had substantial real estate properties, to have affairs. Apparently, he would time these trips according to when Carol was menstruating. According to Don's ex-wife, Gladys, Don was talking about divorcing Carol. In June of 1997, Don actually petitioned for a restraining order against Carol, telling authorities that she threatened to shoot him if he did not leave their house. The petition was rejected because freedom of speech in Florida, but Don provided a copy of this restraining order to his personal secretary, Anne McQueen, in case anything were to happen to him. Carol claims that he filed the restraining order because she would haul off some of his junk property whenever he visited Costa Rica. Don allegedly told Carol that he wanted a divorce several times, but she never thought that he was actually serious. On August 18th, 1997, Don vanished. His 1989 Dodge Ram van was found at the Pilot Country Airport in Spring Hill, Florida, with the keys still inside. There's no record of him boarding a flight, and there were no employees working at the airstrip at the time he arrived. Carol claimed that Don told her that he was going to leave early in the morning to head for Miami to catch a flight for Costa Rica. Before I go any further, I think it's fair to mention that Tiger King did not give Don's full story. They don't go into full detail as to how Don accumulated his wealth. He wasn't only peddling real estate and operating this animal sanctuary. Don Lewis was a loan shark. I think that this is a really important piece of information that was left out on purpose to make Carol look like the prime suspect. Taken from a 1997 newspaper article from the Tampa Bay Times, quote, Wendell Williams, another real estate investor that knew Lewis, added, quote, "I don't want anyone to think that Mr. Lewis wasn't ruthless, because he was," end quote. The same article states that Don bought out mortgages from those who were financially strained and charged 18% interest. If they could make payments on time for 6 months, he allowed them the option to buy back the property for cheap. If not, he evicted them off the property and sold it. Through this method, Don was able to gain 350 or so properties through 5 counties in Florida. Don's first wife, Gladys, sued Don in 1994 after she found out that he had hidden his wealth under various names and accounts to prevent her from getting her full share in their divorce. She received $148,000 in this lawsuit. I think it's critical to mention that the airport that Don would often go to was also a hotspot for drug runners, and that Tampa Bay was a huge hub for distributing drugs. So keep that in mind, and let's move forward. Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department Patrol Sergeant Greg Thomas stated that he just literally vanished into thin air. Investigators discovered that Don's will had been amended so that all of his wealth would go to Carol in the event that he were to die or disappear. Okay, so most wills don't say if I were to disappear. They normally just give instructions for if they were to pass away. I've never really heard of anything like that. So Carol had said that Don had been suffering mentally, insinuating that the onset of dementia or Alzheimer's was likely. It is Carol's theory that Don may have gotten lost or was involved in a tragic accident while flying to Costa Rica. She explained that Don would often fly under the radar to avoid detection, considering he technically did not have his private pilot's license at that time. So she believes that he possibly crashed and that no evidence of him or the plane would have been found. She states that he had crashed a plane 3 times before, but she doesn't believe that he would have been able to cause a crash that was so bad that it caused his own death. Okay, I have an issue with this. It is a well-known fact that Don could not read or write very well. I mean, Carol even said that he had a 1st grade reading level, and he was in his 60s. So how is it possible that he would actually have the knowledge to fly a plane? And if he's crashed before, maybe that tells you, you know, he shouldn't be flying. I don't know. I know nothing about flying a plane. I don't know what kind of skill it takes, but I feel like that if you have a 1st grade reading level, you really don't need to be flying. But that's just my opinion. Carol was asked to take a polygraph test in the midst of the investigation, but declined at the advice of her attorney. She tells Tampa Bay Times that if she had things her way, she would let detectives inspect the wildlife sanctuary and the meat freezer. She said, quote, "I would rather be cooperative, but all legal advice is against it." End quote. Authorities still had no clue what happened to Don Lewis. They searched Costa Rica for 5 days with nothing leading them any closer to their answers, only remnants of illegal business practices and extramarital affairs. A year after his disappearance, Don's children were extremely open with their theories. None of them believed that he would just leave on his own accord. Don's daughter, Linda Sanchez, questioned why Carol would not take a polygraph test. She said, quote, "Every one of us has volunteered to take a lie detector test. Carol is the only one who will not take one," end quote. In a civil court action, all of Don's children have challenged Carol's control of his fortune. They wanted a greater say in its management and a bigger portion of his assets. In September of 1998, a Hillsborough Circuit judge placed Don's assets in a conservatorship controlled by Carol and an outside money manager. Just for anybody who is not like a legal buff, like me, I'm not, I'm going to read the definition of a conservatorship, just in case that's a gray area for anyone. So a conservatorship is when a judge puts a protector or a guardian in charge of someone's finances or daily life of another person due to physical or mental limitations, old age, or in this case, a disappearance. So just FYI. Carol let Don's children have the $1,000 worth of properties that belonged to Don before he was ever married to Carol. In court papers, Carol accused Dawn's secretary, Anne McQueen, of stealing money and putting property under her name. She also claimed that Anne took a life insurance policy out on Dawn only months before his disappearance. Anne claims that Dawn told her to take out this policy, which named her as one of its beneficiaries. Carol expanded their sanctuary to include a bed and breakfast, where the guests were actually able to interact with the exotic animals. This is when the whole feud with Joe Exotic began. Joe believed that Carol had the means to buy whatever she needed for the sanctuary because of the inheritance that she had gotten from her husband's disappearance, while Joe had to scrape for money to maintain his zoo. Dawn's children believe that not only did Carol have something to do with his disappearance, but may have even fed him to tigers, which we all know that this is a huge theory that came out in Tiger King, but Dawn's children were actually the first to theorize this to People magazine in 1998. Quote, "It's a perfect scenario to dispose of someone. We were upset that the cops didn't test the DNA on the meat grinder," end quote. Carol responded to this by saying, quote, "My tigers eat meat. They don't eat people," end quote. Does anyone want to tell her? She said that, quote, "There would be bones and remains of my husband out there. I'm amazed that people would even think of such a thing," end quote. So a cloud of suspicion was cast upon Carol, but there was no evidence to convict her of anything, and she was technically never considered a suspect. She said that, quote, "Without a body, there's nothing I can do to clear my name," end quote. Don Lewis was officially declared legally dead on August 19, 2002, 5 years after his disappearance. His body has never been discovered, and no evidence has led investigators to believe that he is still alive. After Don Lewis vanished, Carol began dating a guy named Jay. Now, I'm not going to say his last name for privacy reasons because I really don't think that he wants anything to do with Carol or Tiger King or anything like that, so I'm not going to include his last name. In 2002, Jay actually filed a restraining order against Carol, which includes some bizarre and suspicious sounding details regarding Dawn's disappearance. The restraining order claimed that upon being asked what would happen if Dawn reappeared, Carol responded, quote, "Dead bodies can't talk," end quote. So that is now 2 restraining orders by men that Carol was in relationships with. I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like having restraining orders put out against you is not like a common occurrence. Like, I feel like you actually have to do something extremely wild to get not only 1, but 2 restraining orders. Carol met Howard Baskin in November of 2002 at a kickoff party for a newly formed No More Homeless Pets organization. He joined Big Cat Rescue as a chairman of the advisory board. He proposed to Carol in November of 2003, and they married a year later. Their wedding pictures literally make me so uncomfortable. Like, I love dogs. I'm saying dogs because I'm not a cat person. I love dogs, but I would never make my husband dress up like one and put him on a leash. But that's just me. If that's what you're into, more power to you. So this leads us to Tiger King. Because of the popularity of this documentary, the Hillsborough County Sheriff Chad Chronister appealed to the public for legitimate leads or evidence to this case. Because of this, the Sheriff's Department has received 6 tips a day regarding Dawn's disappearance. They believe that maybe someone who used to work for Dawn or Carol and had a sour relationship with either of them will come forward with information. Chronister has stated that they do not, quote, "have any type of evidence, not one piece that suggests that Dawn was killed or that a crime was even committed," end quote. So there's no evidence that he's dead or that he was abducted or anything. There's nothing. So let's get into the theories. The elephant or tiger in the room is that everyone legitimately thinks that Carol Baskin had something to do with Dawn Lewis's disappearance, that she murdered her husband and fed him to tigers. So Dawn's children thinks that she did this. Millions of people on the internet think that she did this. Carol's arch nemesis, Joe Exotic, thinks that she did this. O.J. Simpson thinks that she did this. That's all I'm saying on that. But Joe has come out with a music video called Here Kitty Kitty that featured a Carol lookalike feeding raw meat to tigers. Joe has also promoted another theory that Dawn is buried in a septic tank on the sanctuary. So to dispute both of these claims, the meat grinder was removed from the sanctuary property weeks before Dawn's disappearance, and the septic tank wasn't installed until years after. So, is Carol extremely suspicious? Yes. Does her body language and her laughter when she talks about Dawn's disappearance bother me? Yes. Is there any evidence or anything that shows that she had something to do with his disappearance? No. I feel like Tiger King did a great job of entertaining, but they leave out literally so much information. And I feel like they push the idea so hard without any actual evidence. Carol wrote in her blog, quote, "When the directors of the Netflix documentary Tiger King came to us 5 years ago, they said they wanted to make the big cat version of Blackfish, the documentary that exposed abuse at SeaWorld, that would expose the misery caused by the rampant breeding of big cat cubs for cub petting exploitation and the awful life the cats lead in roadside zoos and backyards if they survive. There are not words for how disappointing it is to see that the series not only does not do any of that, but has had the sole goal of being as salacious and sensational as possible to draw viewers. As part of that, it has a segment devoted to suggesting with lies and innuendos from people who are not credible that I had a role in the disappearance of my husband Don in 1997. The series presents this without any regard for the truth, or in most cases even giving me an opportunity before publication to rebut the absurd claims. They did not care about the truth. The unsavory lies are better for getting viewers. There is no short, simple way to refute so many lies. If you do want to know the truth, it requires understanding the history of events in the years before my husband's disappearance and the roles and behaviors of the people interviewed in the series, which I have tried to do as concisely as I can below, but still requires a few pages." I will link that blog post below if you want to check it out, but that is not the only theory. It's been theorized that Don actually framed Carol by filing that restraining order so he could run off to Costa Rica and start a new life with his mistress, leaving Carol to answer for his disappearance. I mean, Carol and Don absolutely butted heads on how they believed that the sanctuary needed to be run, so I don't know. Could he have? Possibly. I really think that if that were the case, they would have found him by now. I mean, he absolutely had the means to just run off. Apparently he would keep thousands of dollars buried, so he definitely had more money than bank records would show. I will note that he did confide in his friend that, quote, "If I pull this off, it'll be the slickest thing I've ever done," end quote. Not sure what context that this was told in, but I felt the need to mention it. Another theory is that he was flying to Costa Rica and crashed his own plane and has just never been found. It's also been speculated that he was involved in some kind of drug activity. I mean, it's no secret that he knew how to keep his wealth pretty private from a lot of people, his first wife included, and real estate can only get you so far. And exotic animal trade and drug trade go hand in hand. Apparently, he was considered a mentor to other big cat breeders who were into drug smuggling, polygamy, and the black market trade. So maybe he had some kind of issues with opposing smugglers, or he owed somebody money, or somebody owed him money and things just went wrong. There are literally so many theories as to what happened and no answers to concur any of them. So what do you think? Do you think that Carol Baskin killed her husband and fed him to tigers? Do you think that Don started a new life somewhere? Or maybe got caught up in something that was way bigger than what he had imagined? Let me know your thoughts and your theories down below in the comments. This is still an unsolved case, so if you have any kind of information, please contact the Hillsborough Police Department. I swear, anytime I say Hillsborough, I'm immediately reminded of Woodsboro, which is the city that the Scream movies are set in. So, yeah, what does that say about me? I swear I could do a whole series based on Tiger King and what all they left out of the documentary. Like, who is Joe Exotic really? And why is his eyebrow ring in the middle of his eyelid? Is Doc Antle really the leader of some sex cult? Is Jeff Lowe really Carol Baskin's first husband, Michael Murdoch? And why does Carol Baskin look like she'd be a Manson girl? These are the questions that haunt me. So many memes have come from this documentary, and I feel like it's honestly kind of helped everyone come together in a time when we physically cannot come together. But man, this documentary is wild. But the stories behind what they showed are honestly even wilder than that. So let me know if you want me to do a full in-depth video or series on Tiger King. I think it's super interesting. And you know, this is a true crime YouTube channel, and there is a ton of true crime that is committed and that happens in and beyond the series. So I would love to do that for you. If you would like to see that, let me know down below in the comments. On that note, I think I'm going to go, you guys. Thank you so much, as always, for watching this video. Don't forget to give this video a like if you liked it. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, hey, thanks for joining us, and join the weirdness and subscribe. I'm still pretty new to this, but I think we're having some fun. I mean, at least I am. So, anyway, so I'm going to leave some of my favorite Tiger King memes at the end of this, so enjoy those. And yeah, so stay weird, stay safe, and stay home. We're still there, but we're staying home. So yeah, I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.
Carol Baskin killed her husband, whacked him. Can't convince me that it didn't happen. Fed them to tigers, they snacking. What's happening? Carol Baskin.